What's happening, people? Thank you very much for hanging out for a little bit. I'm Orlando Ruiz Jr., and welcome to another classic movie review. So, this film was directed by the great action director Walter Hill, the director responsible for classic movies like 1979's The Warriors and 1975's Hard Times, one of my favorite Charles Bronson flicks. The movie I'm talking about is, of course, 48 Hours. This film stars Nick Nolte. He was just becoming a big name after starring in movies like North Dallas 40, an awesome football drama, and The Deep. And this also co-stars the great Eddie Murphy in his first ever starring role. He was becoming a big name at this time, just blowing up because of his success as a standout personality on Saturday Night Live. And as a kid, I remember having the Best of Eddie Murphy Saturday Night Live VHS tape, and I wore that tape out, watching that over and over again. I used to do the impersonations that he would do for my parents, and they would just crack up, even though I was just some little kid that didn't know what the hell he was saying. But yeah, great times. And Eddie Murphy was really on a roll back then. After starring in this film, he went on to star in one classic after another. Movies like Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop 2, The Golden Child, Coming to America. Just one classic after another. And it was really a privilege to grow up around this time in the late 80s, early 90s, and be around to see this guy at the top of his game. And this is one of those movies that I used to watch all the time back in the day. And I still come back to this movie because it just has kind of this lightning in a bottle, classic, instant magic every time I watch it because these two guys are so great together. So Sandy Landham plays Billy Bear and James Remar plays Gans. The two of them were part of a quartet of small-time criminals that consisted of Billy Bear, Gans, a guy named Luther who was also on the outside, played by David Patrick Kelly. He is the guy that, I remember he was also in The Warriors as well, and he was also in Commando. He's the guy that Arnold Schwarzenegger has him by his ankles, holding him off of the edge of a cliff, and tells him, "Remember, Sully, when I promised to kill you last, I lied." Then he just drops him, of course. And I'm sorry, I'm terrible at impersonations, but yeah, so he's that little guy. So Billy Bear and Gans go on the run. They're hiding out somewhere. Not long after this, Jack Cates catches up with them. A shootout happens. A fellow officer loses his life. And from that moment on, it becomes real personal for Jack Cates. And of course, in order to find Gans and Billy Bear, he goes to his known associate, played by Eddie Murphy. So he meets up with him in jail and pulls him out for 48 hours. And from the very beginning, their relationship is rocky, to say the least. These two guys don't like each other at all. Of course, one guy is a con, one guy is a cop, and so there is that natural animosity. Something I have to say about the Jack Cates character, it really is kind of messed up to see him verbally abuse Eddie Murphy throughout the movie and just be really degrading. Some of that stuff can be a little uncomfortable, especially for today's audience, I'm sure. But given that this was 1982, you just sort of take it the way it was at this time, considering that's just how things were back then. And even back then, they knew it was wrong. You know, like the Jack Cates character later on in the film, as he sort of starts to warm up to Reggie Hammond's character, eventually he does apologize to him and he tells him, "I'm sorry for all that stuff I said," because he says some really mean stuff to him. He calls him a spear chucker. He calls him watermelon. He says the N-word to him. And it gets really bad to the point where there's even a fist fight between the two of them. The fist fight between Cates and Hammond is actually a lot of fun to watch. They both give each other a pretty good beating, and it's a pretty even-handed fight. Cates ends up pretty bloodied, and so does Hammond. But one of the things that I kind of wish was different about this scene, I wish that they would have let Eddie Murphy do more of his own fighting, or maybe Eddie Murphy didn't want to do a lot of his own fighting, because when you watch the movie, you can tell that it's a stunt double doing most of his fighting for him. It's done in a lot of wide shots, and then when you see close-ups, you just see some close-ups of Eddie Murphy, and then they cut to wide shots of a stunt double, and that kind of takes me out of it a bit. But besides that, it's still a pretty good fight to watch. And it's really cool because after this fight, it feels like they do get to a turning point, and it sort of solidifies their partnership even more. You know that old saying of you're really not real buddies until after you've fought in each other. And that's kind of what happens here in this case. There's a really cool chase that happens, a lot of destruction involving a convertible chasing a bus, a city bus being hijacked by the bad guys. And of course, because of the destruction, there's a classic scene where the captain, police captain played by Frank McRae, everybody that's seen Last Action Hero, Frank McRae. He was the police captain in that movie who's shouting constantly at Arnold's character. There's that funny scene where he's got the smoke coming out of his ears and stuff, coming out of his mouth and nose and everything. And yeah, so yeah, he's that guy. I remember he was also in Rocky 2. He was Rocky's boss at the meat packing plant who laid him off because, economics. But yeah, so that guy's in the movie, and he's also yelling a lot at Cates and Hammond in this one scene, and that's kind of where the two of them really show that they both are actually starting to care about each other because as Frank McRae really lays into him, Reggie Hammond's like, "Why don't you give this guy a break?" And then, he does some more yelling, and Nick Nolte's character is like, "Hey, this guy has more guts than any other partner I ever worked with." And so, yeah, even though the two of them start off at the beginning of the film really hating each other and all that shit talking, it's really cool to see that develop into a genuine friendship. And that's one of the special things about this movie. This movie really did usher in the era of the action buddy comedy flick that kept going with movies like Lethal Weapon, Tango and Cash, Bad Boys, and Rush Hour. And it really all goes back to 48 Hours. This is an awesome action buddy comedy flick that I highly recommend because of the fight scene with Hammond and Cates with the obvious stunt double and some kind of weak acting by our main villain towards the end of the movie in his final scenes. The acting is just kind of cringy for me in the last scene that he's in. Those are the things that hold this movie back from getting a top rating, but I still enjoy this movie. It is a real fun time, and the two actors, Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy, are well worth taking a look at this film. It is a classic action buddy comedy, and I give it 3 stars. So check this movie out. I've seen it on streaming. I think I've seen it on Netflix. I've seen it on Amazon Prime before, but they get taken off, switched around from time to time. So get yourself a hard copy. They're out there. I really wish this was the original poster, but you got to sort of take what you can get sometimes. So yeah, this is my Blu-ray, 48 hours. And yeah, get yourself a copy if you want to check this out or find it on streaming. I'm sure you can find it. It's a popular movie from back in the day. So thank you very much for watching. If you're into the classic movies, look out for more reviews. Hit that bell notifications. Please like, subscribe, and share. Comment what's your favorite Eddie Murphy movie or Nick Nolte movie or your favorite action buddy comedy flick. And look out for the next classic movie review. Till next time, take care of each other.